class. Welcome to my first video for this year. When I'm out, I try to do a video to help you understand some of the problems I think you might have some trouble with. At any point, if the video is going too fast, feel free to pause it so that you can write down what you need to write down and then play again when you're ready to move on. You can also go back and watch the video again or any part of the video again if you need to. All right, so what I wanted to do was just look over that practice quiz that I gave you, and what's up on the screen right now is one of the first questions on that practice quiz. Just as the practice quiz said, if you can do these problems, you can probably do just fine on the quiz tomorrow. So what we want to do here today is we want to look at how to solve some of these problems. I'm not going to do both of them. I'm going to do A and C, and I'm going to leave B and D for you to do. But A and C both have to do with f of x. So you would use f of x that I circled there in red. If you wanted to use B or D, you could do g of x, which I have circled in blue. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Let's look at A. A asks for f of 5. If I want to do f of 5, what I'm going to do is substitute 5 everywhere in f of x where I see x. So that's what I want to do now. I'm going to go ahead and change it back to red. So f of 5 equals, and I'm looking at f of x that I have circled up here in red, and I see that it equals the square root of x plus 4. So I'm going to substitute 5 where x was, plus 4. Then I can type that in my calculator and get an answer, or I can do it in my head. 5 plus 4 is 9. So I'd have the square root of 9. And most people know the square root of 9 is 3, although it's fine to use your calculator for that as well. That one's finished. Let's look at C, because C is a little different. C does not say what is f of a number. It wants to know what x would be if f of x equals 10. Well, remember that f of x is the same as y. So one way to do this is to use your calculator. Go into the y equals, put in f of x, which you would put in the y1. You'd type in square root of x plus 4. Then you'd go to your table and you'd scroll till you find x equals 10. That's one way to do it. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do it with algebra, although I don't expect you to have to do it with algebra a whole lot. I'll show you how to do it with algebra since I don't have a calculator I can show you here. So what we're going to do is actually we're going to experiment with, we'll just do it with algebra. Sorry. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that instead of f of x, we're going to say 10 equals the square root of x plus 4. Now, I know, to undo a square root, you may or may not have seen this before, but to undo a square root, we simply square it. When we square a square root, that gets rid of both the squared and the square root. But if we do it on the right side, we have to do it on the left side to keep it even. 10 squared means 10 times 10, which is 100. That equals, when I square this square root on the right side, the squared and the square root go away, so all I have is x plus 4. Now I have a simple algebra problem where I can subtract 4 from both sides, and I get 96 equals x. You can check it out by doing the square root of 96 plus 4 in your calculator, looking back at f of x there, and make sure it gives you 10, but it should. So there is your answer for that one. Remind me on Friday to look at D with you, showing you how to do it with the calculator and the table. All right, so if I went too fast, feel free to pause it, but I'm moving on to this next problem. And this one asks us to describe the domain and range for each function. I'm going to do A, I'm going to leave B for you to do. All right, looking at A, if you remember when we talked about domain, we talked about the idea that domain is left to right because it's the x-axis. So we start at the left and we move to the right along the x-axis. Well, if I start on the left of this parabola and move left, I have an arrow down here, so it keeps going forever. So I know that it goes to negative infinity. Now, if I move to the right, I end up stopping right there at that circle. And that circle is on x equals 6. Infinity always gets a rounded bracket if we're doing it in the bracket form. There's something that we haven't talked about yet, and I won't quiz you on it, but I do want you to know it, and that is that if that dot is open, it's not filled in, it's not a dot, it's actually an open circle, then that means it's not equal to 6. So we'll use a rounded bracket. If it were a filled in dot, then it would be equal to 6, and we'd use the square bracket. Another way we can write this answer is domain looks at x. So we could say x is less than 6, because 6 is the furthest to the right that graph goes. It stops at 6. It goes to the left more, but at the right, it stops on 6. Now let's look at our range. If we look at the range, remember we said range is bottom to top. So if we go down toward the bottom, we have an arrow. So it goes forever, or negative infinity. If we go up, the highest it ever goes is up here at the vertex, which if you look at the y value for that is 6. So it's again, just coincidentally, negative infinity to 6. Infinity always gets a round bracket, but in this case, the 6 does not have an open dot. It has a filled in line. So we do a square bracket. That square bracket says include the 6 in the range. Other way we could write it is y. Again, it's pointing down, so less than or equal to, on this case, 6. So the only difference is the x is not equal to, the y is. They're not always the same, just happen that way in this problem. All right, you guys can look at B on your own. I'm going to move on. If I'm going too fast, please pause. Okay, for number 3, it asks us to determine where the graphs intersect. Well, so the best way to do that is to use a calculator and graph it. Unfortunately, I haven't figured out how to get the calculator on this video yet. Let me see if that's a calculator. Nope, that is not what I wanted, so I'm going to close that. Oh no, I killed it. Okay. So I suppose I shall have to open it again. Sorry for the delay. I don't want to redo this yet again though, so I am going to reopen that. Thank you for waiting. And I'm just going to grab the next problem and bring it over. So thank you again for being patient with me. All right, and this was the problem we were looking at just a second ago. And I said I did not have a calculator I could work with on it. So what we would want to do, if I had a calculator I could show you, is I'd want to go to y1 and I'd put this in y1 in the calculator. I'd go to y2 and put this one in y2. When I graph those, I'm going to give you a rough sketch of what it would look like if you graphed it on a graphing calculator. You'd have an x and a y axis. I'd have one line that would look something like this. I'd have another line that looks something like this. I know it's a very rough sketch because I'm drawing on the computer, so please forgive me. And we'd be looking for their intersection, or this point. Now, we talked on Tuesday about how to find that. There's a couple things you can press in the calculator. You can do second, then press calc, and then choose number 5 for intersect. And then you enter 3 times. It'll give you that intersection. There's another way you can do it, which is second table, And if you press second table on your calculator, you will get the list of the values. And what you're looking for is the place that y1 equals y2. Either way you do it, you can see that this intersection right here is back here where the in the negative x region. So you want to scroll up in that x table to get negative numbers for the x. Once you do that, you will find that it's somewhere, and the exact answer would be at -2 on the x, 9 on the y. All right, you may want to practice, test that out, see if you can get it on your calculator. Sorry that I couldn't show. You're going to do the exact same thing with b, except two different equations. I'm going to let you work b on your own. All right, I'm ready to move on to the next one. Give me just a second to insert a new page and get the problem from the work over here. All right, there's our problem, and let me go ahead and get a piece of graph paper. And I am going to have to shrink that graph down just a little bit. Oh, that looks funny, doesn't it? Don't know why it shrunk it up all funny like that, but we'll see what we can do with it. It is a little bit of a funny shrunk graph, but that's okay. We can work with it. All right, so it asks us to graph this and identify the domain and range. So the first thing I would do would be I would go to my calculator and not worry about where it says f of x. I would put it in y1. Clear out all the other stuff, and in the y1 on my calculator, I'd type in this x squared minus 2x minus 8. I would get a table. That would be the next thing I do. I'd go to the table in my calculator. And in my calculator, it's going to give me a table, and I'm going to see some numbers in the x and the y1 in my calculator. I know that at -4, I believe it was a really big number, like 16. That's too big to fit on my graph, so I wouldn't want to bother with that number. But my next number would be -3, 9. And that does fit on my graph. Is that correct? Is it -3, 9? No, I don't think that's right. Hold on just a second. Ay, ay, ay. -3. It's actually 7. Sorry about that. Doing this completely without a calculator, so I apologize. And then at -2, I get negative. Okay, I quit.